Starting with the Committee on Capital Planning, Execution, and Asset Management, which will be chaired by Vice Chair Jeff Linford. We'll conclude the public portion of today's meeting with the public board meeting. Today's public meetings are also being broadcast live on the Port Authority website for those interested in viewing today's proceedings via the internet. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today's meeting of the Committee on Capital Planning, Execution, and Asset Management is being held in public session in its entirety. At this point, I ask the Deputy Secretary to advise those present of the compensation of the committee and any commissioner recusals on the items before the committee at today's meeting.
The committee is composed of Commissioner Linford, the committee chair, Commissioner O'Toole, the committee vice chair, and Commissioners LaBarbera, Pacino, and Rosado. All committee members are present at today's meeting.
Thank you. First, I will call on our Chief Development Officer, Derek Otter, to present an item authorizing a new lease to support redevelopment efforts at John F. Kennedy International Airport. I see they push you further back from the dais here. Is it something we said, Derek, or what? You're on, I'm sorry.
I don't know. So I will cover the first part of this presentation, and I'm going to ask Huntley Lawrence, Director of Aviation, to cover the second piece of this. But thank you, Vice Chairman. I'd like to start out on JFK redevelopment with just a little bit of background. So in October of 2018, the board authorized us to enter into exclusive negotiations for the redevelopment and development of two new terminals at JFK, including a major new terminal development on the south side of the airport. And that was October of 2018, based on detailed term sheets, design concepts, financial models, and financial arrangements with the Port Authority. And at that time, we said once the leases are fully negotiated, we would come back to the board for formal approval of the leases. In addition, the board also authorized spending for a total of almost $600 million over 3 board meetings. $150 million of planning funds in February of 2017 and December of 2018, and just last month, $445 million for early works actions and additional planning work. Today, we are seeking authorization to enter into a lease for the development of the new Terminal 1, and also to seek an additional $515 million in redevelopment funds, largely for airside infrastructure work to support the new Terminal 1 project. The new terminal will be a centerpiece of our efforts to reimagine JFK Airport. We have an aspiration to achieve a top terminal ranking. We expect there will be architectural features which provide a real sense of place. There'll be a tremendous focus on world-class customer experience. And we are evolving the governance model at JFK to include key performance indicators, penalties, incentives, and a real focus on metrics and continuous improvement by the terminal operators. Just briefly summarize the key terms of the agreement that we reached, and this is very consistent with what we came to you a year ago in broad strokes to discuss. There are 4 airline partners. These are the same current owners of Terminal 1, which are Air France, Japan Airlines, Korean Air, and Lufthansa. Those 4 partners have now brought in 3 financial partners to help fund and help drive project delivery, which include the Carlyle Group, Johnson Loop Capital, who's an investor at LaGuardia Airport, and the Union Labor Life Insurance Company, ULICO. The terminal will be 2.8 million square feet, which is 3 times or greater than 3 times the current Terminal 1 and Terminal 2 combined. So the terminals that will be demolished are being replaced by something greater than 3 times the size. It will have 22 wide-body gates, 1 narrow-body gate, and it will open in phases. With the first phase, the first roughly half of the project will open up in mid-2023, and the full terminal will be open by the end of 2025. This is a $7.4 billion investment, all of it on the leasehold property, which we will define as a leased interest for the developers, and all $7.4 billion will be private capital. In addition, there's related Port Authority infrastructure work, which is included in the 2017 to 2026 capital plan. The Port Authority will receive payments from the developers, from the lessee, which include a variety of fixed rents, as well as a percentage of the concession revenue that is generated. The 4 airline partners are committing, as part of this deal, to anchor tenant arrangements over the long term in this new terminal. Importantly, we focused on sustainability and technology as two key elements to make sure that this terminal truly is state-of-the-art. In terms of sustainability, we have secured commitments during the construction period to use low-emissions construction equipment, to use low-emissions worker shuttle buses. We'll have a barging operation, which will allow for materials to be ferried via water as opposed to be driven through neighborhoods, and to take waste away from the construction project as well. Once the terminals are open, we also have sustainability commitments related to zero emissions ground support equipment and charging infrastructure, the capture and recycling of aircraft de-icing fluid, rainwater recapture and on-site reuse and flush fixtures. We have a commitment to achieve LEED Silver designation with the aspiration to achieve LEED Gold, and we're targeting zero waste through 100% recyclable materials and composting of organic waste. In terms of technology, go back one. In terms of technology, the new terminals will be designed with a full measure of the emerging technologies to improve passenger convenience and security. So biometrics, self-service check-in kiosks, automated bag drop, and infrastructure to support things like single token identification, which will allow passengers to be identified using biometrics at one place, which will then identify the various checkpoints through the terminal. And 5G will also have state-of-the-art security, including security surveillance with intelligent video analytics. We've also focused on MWBE, minority, women, business enterprises, and community development. This has been a huge focus of the team, and there's been a very active engagement with the local community through something called the JFK Advisory Council. We have a 30% MWBE target, which is on this large number is a very large number, but it applies not only to the entirety of the project, but also specific categories of work. So the design work will have a 30% target. Construction work will have a 30% target. The operations and maintenance, once the building is up and operating, will also have a 30% target, as well as financial services relating to the financing of the project. The group, the new Terminal 1 group, has been a very good partner, has been active and major supporter of the community development initiatives we've announced to date, including 4 which were announced last month. And importantly, they made a commitment to local business goal of 50% of the food and beverage venues being local businesses. In terms of the Port Authority capital expenditure request today, we are requesting $515 million, which, as I said, largely for airside work, which is repaving, installation of fueling and drainage systems, and installation of glycol, which we call aircraft de-icing fluid collection systems. There's also a small amount of that 515, which is going towards additional soft costs to support the ongoing work on the airside program as we advance design work and ultimately leads towards an RFP next year for some of the landside infrastructure on the Port Authority property. So this, along with the previous $595 million in funding authorized, will bring the total authorized to about $1.1 billion of the $2.9 billion that we have in the Port Authority capital plan. So in conclusion, I recommend that the committee advance these JFK redevelopment requests to the full board for approval. And if there's no questions, I'll have Huntley continue the second piece of this presentation.
Thank you, Derek. May I please have a motion from a committee member who is not recused on this matter?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Good, guys. Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is passed. I now call on our Director of Aviation, Huntley Lawrence, to present an item concerning a project to rehabilitate taxiways A and B East and taxiways A and B South at John F. Kennedy International Airport. Huntley.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'd like to present a project to rehabilitate portions of taxiways Alpha and Bravo, or A and B, at John F. Kennedy International Airport. Taxiways Alpha and Bravo encircle the central terminal area and are used by most departing and arrival aircraft at JFK. The eastern and southern portions of these taxiways were last rehabilitated in 2007 and 2008, respectively. Based on recent analysis, the pavement shows surface deterioration due to normal wear associated with use. The project scope of work includes milling and overlaying the asphalt pavement of the taxiways, new lighting, and also new signage. These areas that we are focused on in the east and southern portions of the taxiway are about 4.5 miles in total. The capital spending on this project will serve to create new jobs as well as to support existing jobs. The total economic activity impacts for this project is expected to be about 1,350 total job years, including direct and indirect jobs, and about 102 million in total payroll wages. Work will be staged and performed to minimize impact on operations to our stakeholders. Construction will be coordinated with JFK redevelopment airside work. The estimated total project cost is $145 million, including $95 million for construction. The remaining costs for the project are for planning, engineering, support, contingency, and agency allocations, including insurance, administrative, and financial expenses. $125 million is in the 2017 to 2026 capital plan, and offsets have been identified to cover the remaining $20 million. All costs are recoverable via the JFK flight fees. Upon your approval of this project, design will be completed with construction expected to commence in the second quarter of 2021 and finish in the fourth quarter of 2024. Commissioners, pending your questions, I ask that this project authorization be advanced to the board for consideration.
May I please have a motion from a committee member? Second. Thank you. Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is passed. Next, Huntley will present an item concerning a project to rehabilitate runway 4R 22L at the Newark Liberty International Airport. Huntley.
Commissioners, next up is a request for project authorization to rehabilitate runway 4 right, 22 left at Newark Liberty International Airport to maintain a state of good repair, extend the useful life of the runway, and ensure compliance with FAA standards. Authorization is also requested to apply to the FAA, or Federal Aviation Administration, for passenger facility charges to cover eligible project costs. Runway 4 right, 22 left at Newark is 10,000 feet long by 150 feet wide and serves as the primary landing runway at Newark Airport. In 2018, this runway handled approximately 46% of activity, and overall we handled about 455,000 movements at Newark Airport. The runway was last rehabilitated in 2012, and the pavement shows surface deterioration due to normal wear associated with use. The project scope of work includes milling and overlay, the asphalt pavement, the runway shoulders and intersection taxiways, new pavement markings, electrical infrastructure replacement, and new lighting and signage. The capital spending on this project will serve to create new jobs as well as to support existing jobs. And the total economic activity for this project is expected to be 920 total job years and $68.4 million in total payroll wages. Work will be staged and performed to minimize impact on operations to our stakeholders, and the staging will take into account feedback from the FAA and major airline carriers that are serving Newark Airport. The estimated total project cost is $99.2 million, including $62.2 million for construction. The remaining costs for this project are for planning, engineering, support, contingency, and agency allocations, including insurance, administrative, and financial expenses. $94 million is included in the 2017 to 2026 capital plan, and offsets have been identified to cover the remaining $5.2 million. It is anticipated that this project will receive $33.8 million in total Airport Improvement Program grants, or AIP funding, $23 million in entitlement funds, and $10 million potentially in discretionary funds. In addition, approval is being sought, as I said before, to apply for PFCs to cover a portion of eligible project costs. Any costs not reimbursed by AIP funding or recovered through PFCs will be recovered through the Newark Airport flight fees. Upon your approval of this project, design will be completed and contract documents will be developed. Construction is expected to commence in March of 2021 when the runway reopening, with the runway reopening in the fourth quarter of that year. It will not be a single continuous closure. We're looking at different options and how we would actually stage the work, working with the FAA and the airline stakeholders. The proposed schedule was developed taking into account other airfield projects occurring simultaneously at Newark Airport, including the south and the north airfield paving projects and the new Terminal 1 development. In addition, this project must be coordinated with runway rehabilitation work at Teterboro Airport, since the two airports share airspace. Commissioners, pending your questions, I ask that this project authorization be advanced to the board for consideration.
Mr. Chairman, you had a question?
Through you, Chair, the question, Huntley, is number one, you're talking about minimizing operational impact. We're talking about taking a asset that you say has 42 and 46% of either landings or takeoffs, so concerned a little bit about what that impact really is. How do you really minimize that when you're saying for the better part of, I guess, 4 quarters of a year that we're going to be milling and paving and fixing the electrical structures as well?
So,
Talk about that impact.
So the impacts, this is again the main arrival runway, so whether we are in the north flow, landing on runway 4 right, or south flow landing on runway 22 left, again, 46% of aircraft use the runway. So what we'll be looking to do is a lot of work night times. We'll be looking to do a lot of the work on weekends and limiting the amount of a full closure. By contrast, we were able to work with the FAA on the New York side to close a runway for 229 days. We don't envision having a long, continuous closure like this, but we are weighing the options, making sure that we coordinate with the airlines, the major stakeholders, and also with the FAA. But we're looking at different options to make sure that we minimize the impact. But in certain periods of the day, when the winds are not necessarily in our favor, there could be instances where the airport could be on a single runway, and we're trying to minimize those impacts as much as possible.
And prior to the execution of this contract in 2021 and working in conjunction with the FAA, I suspect you'll come back to the board and just give us a more definitive plan as to how you're going to minimize the operational impact.
Certainly, as we work with the stakeholders, we will develop a plan on how we minimize that to the maximum extent possible, and we'll certainly come back to you and share that.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Huntley. May I please have a motion from a committee member who is not recused? May I have a second, please? We will forward this item to the full board. Any objections? Hearing none, the motion, do I have to ask for, okay, I see you standing up, and I worry. I shouldn't, okay. Hearing none, the motion is passed. This concludes today's meeting of the Committee on Capital Planning, Execution, and Asset Management. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.